Arcure the University of Love, grad student and counselor, forbidden romance. Maya's hands trembled as she stood outside Dr. Elena Torres' office, her heart pounding so violently she could hear nothing else. She had come to the University Counseling Center seeking help for her anxiety attacks, never imagining that the woman behind that mahogany door would become the person she couldn't stop thinking about, the face that appeared in every dream, the voice that echoed in her mind during every quiet moment. What had started as professional therapy sessions had evolved into something neither of them could name, something that existed in the charged silences between words, in the way Elena's eyes lingered a fraction too long, in the accidental brush of fingers that sent electricity coursing through Maya's entire body. But this was wrong, impossibly wrong. Elena was her counselor, bound by ethics and professional codes that made what Maya felt not just inappropriate, but potentially destructive to both their futures. Yet here she was about to knock on that door one more time, knowing that today would be different, knowing that she could no longer pretend these feelings didn't exist. Maya had arrived at Riverside University 3 months earlier, a 24-year-old graduate student in literary theory, running from a past that still haunted her nights. Her previous relationship had ended in devastation when her girlfriend had outed her to her conservative family, resulting in an estrangement so complete that Maya sometimes felt like an orphan. The anxiety had started then, creeping into her life like a shadow that grew longer with each passing day, until she found herself unable to sleep, unable to eat, unable to focus on her dissertation about queer narratives in contemporary fiction. The irony wasn't lost on her that she studied love, stories she couldn't seem to live herself. Her faculty advisor had gently suggested counseling, and Maya had reluctantly agreed, expecting nothing more than clinical advice and perhaps a prescription for medication that would numb the sharp edges of her pain. Dr. Elena Torres had been nothing like what Maya expected. At 32, Elena possessed a quiet confidence that filled the room before she even spoke. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a professional bun, but a few rebellious strands inevitably escaped to frame her face, softening the sharp intelligence in her dark brown eyes. She dressed impeccably in tailored blazers and elegant blouses, maintaining the clear boundary of professionalism, yet there was warmth beneath that polished exterior that Maya found herself drawn to like a moth to flame. During their first session, Elena had listened with an intensity that made Maya feel truly seen for the first time in years. She didn't offer empty platitudes or rush to diagnose and dismiss. Instead, she asked questions that penetrated deep. That made Maya think and feel and remember why she had once believed in the possibility of happiness. Elena spoke about trauma not as a life sentence, but as something that could be understood, processed, and ultimately integrated into a fuller, richer existence. By the end of that first hour, Maya had cried more than she had in months, and Elena had simply sat with her in that vulnerability, not trying to fix or minimize, just bearing witness to her pain. The sessions became the center of Maya's week, the point around which everything else orbited. She told herself it was because therapy was helping, which was true. The anxiety attacks had decreased in frequency and intensity, and she was sleeping better, even managing to write several pages of her dissertation. But Maya knew there was more to it than therapeutic progress. She found herself dressing more carefully on counseling days, choosing clothes that made her feel confident and beautiful. She replayed their conversations endlessly, analyzing every word, every pause, every moment when Elena's professional mask seemed to slip just slightly. There was the time Maya had been crying about her family's rejection, and Elena had reached across the small space between their chairs to gently touch her hand, a contact that lasted perhaps 3 seconds but burned itself into Maya's memory with searing permanence. There was the session when Maya had shared a breakthrough about self-acceptance, and Elena's face had lit up with such genuine joy and pride that Maya had felt her heart physically ache in her chest. And there were the moments when their eyes would meet and hold, when the air between them seemed to thicken and pulse with something unspoken and electric, when Maya could swear she saw in Elena's gaze the same longing she felt consuming her from the inside out. Maya wasn't naive. She knew about transference, that phenomenon where clients develop feelings for their therapists as part of the healing process. Elena had even discussed it in one of their early sessions, explaining it academically, clinically, as if preparing Maya for something she might experience. But what Maya felt wasn't some psychological projection or misplaced gratitude. This was desire, pure and undeniable. She wanted to know everything about Elena beyond what happened in that office. She wanted to hear about her childhood, her dreams, her fears, the books that made her cry and the music that made her dance. She wanted to trace the line of Elena's jaw with her fingers, to discover if her lips were as soft as they appeared, to make her laugh in that unguarded way that transformed her entire face. Maya had been in love before, and she recognized the feeling. The way it rewired your brain until another person became essential as breathing. What made this different, what made it agonizing, was that she could see Elena fighting the same battle, could sense the war between professional responsibility and human feeling that played out behind Elena's carefully maintained composure. The breaking point came during a session in late October. Maya had been talking about loneliness, about how isolating it felt to navigate the world as a queer woman who had lost her family, who struggled to trust anyone enough to let them close. She had looked directly at Elena while speaking, and something in her words or her tone or perhaps just the accumulated weight of all their sessions together caused Elena's professional facade to crack. For just a moment, Elena's eyes had filled with tears that she blinked away quickly, and her voice had wavered, slightly as she responded that Maya deserved to be loved completely and unconditionally, that the right person would see all of her and cherish every part. The way Elena said it with such fierce conviction and such barely contained emotion made Maya understand with sudden certainty that Elena wasn't speaking abstractly. She was speaking from her own experience of seeing Maya, of knowing her, and perhaps of feeling something she couldn't acknowledge. After that session, Maya had walked across campus in a daze, barely noticing the autumn leaves falling around her like confetti. She had gone to the library and researched ethics codes for counselors, reading about dual relationships and boundary violations, about the power imbalances inherent in the therapeutic relationship, and the potential for harm. Everything she read reinforced what she already knew intellectually. Pursuing anything with Elena would be wrong, could cost Elena her license and her career, could damage Maya's own healing process and emotional well-being. The ethical path was clear. Finish the term of counseling, terminate the professional relationship properly, and move on with her life. But that night, unable to sleep, Maya had admitted to herself that she didn't want to do the right thing. She wanted Elena with a desperation that frightened her, and she was almost certain Elena wanted her too. The question was whether either of them had the courage to act on feelings that could destroy everything they had built. Maya had resolved to let it go, to finish her counseling sessions and say goodbye to Elena forever. She had even started the termination process, telling Elena in their next session that she felt ready to continue her healing work independently. Elena had accepted this news with professional grace, though Maya noticed how her hands had tightened almost imperceptibly on her notepad, how a flicker of something that looked like grief had crossed her face before she smoothed it away. They had scheduled 2 more sessions to properly conclude their therapeutic relationship, and Maya had been determined to maintain appropriate boundaries during those final meetings. But then, 3 days before their scheduled second-to-last session, Maya had seen Elena at a campus coffee shop, sitting alone with a book, her hair down for once, cascading over her shoulders in dark waves that made Maya's breath catch. Elena had looked up and their eyes had met, and Maya had watched Elena's professional mask drop completely, replaced by an expression of such naked longing that it physically stopped Maya in her tracks. Elena had gestured to the empty chair at her table in silent invitation, and Maya had found herself sitting down despite every warning bell ringing in her mind. For the first time, they had talked as equals. Not counselor and client, but simply 2 women discovering each other. Elena had shared that she had moved to Riverside University 2 years ago after ending a long-term relationship in Chicago, seeking a fresh start and hoping to focus on her career. She loved her work but sometimes felt isolated, always maintaining professional distance, never allowing herself to be fully known. She had been raised by a single mother who had sacrificed everything for her education, and she felt the weight of that sacrifice, the pressure to be perfect, to never make mistakes that could squander the opportunities her mother had fought to give her. As Elena talked, Maya had seen beneath the polished professional to the vulnerable human underneath, and her heart had expanded with a tenderness that was almost painful in its intensity. Maya had shared more about her own story, about growing up in a small Texas town where being different was dangerous, about the girlfriend who had betrayed her trust, about her fears that she might never find a place where she truly belonged. Elena had listened with the same focused attention she brought to their therapy sessions, but without the professional distance. And when Maya's voice had broken talking about her family's rejection, Elena had reached across the table and taken her hand, not as a counselor offering comfort, but as a woman who understood pain and wanted to ease it. They had sat like that for a long moment, hands clasped on the scarred wooden table, the coffee shop buzzing with conversation around them, existing in a bubble where only the two of them were real. Then Elena had pulled her hand back, her expression anguished, and said softly that this couldn't happen, that she had worked too hard and sacrificed too much to risk her career and her integrity, that Maya deserved better than a relationship born from an ethical violation that would always carry the taint of impropriety. Maya had felt something inside her break then, a clean snap like a bone fracturing under too much pressure. She had nodded, understanding and hating Elena's reasoning in equal measure, and had left the coffee shop with tears streaming down her face. She had cried all night, grieving not just Elena but the possibility of love itself, wondering if she was destined to always want things she couldn't have, people who couldn't or wouldn't choose her. The next morning, she had seriously considered canceling their remaining counseling sessions, simply ending everything by email and avoiding the pain of seeing Elena again. But Maya had never been a coward and she refused to start now. She would attend the sessions, she would say a proper goodbye, and then she would somehow find a way to move forward with her life. That decision was what brought Maya to this moment, standing outside Elena's office door, her hand raised to knock, her heart full of feelings she had no right to have. She knocked twice, firm and decisive, and heard Elena's voice call for her to enter. Maya walked in and found Elena standing by the window instead of sitting in her usual chair, her back to the door, her shoulders tense. The late afternoon sun cast golden light across the room, illuminating the books lining the shelves, the framed degrees on the walls, all the markers of Elena's professional identity. Elena turned slowly and Maya saw immediately that something was different. Elena's eyes were red-rimmed, and her professional composure had vanished, replaced by raw emotion that transformed her face. Elena spoke first, her voice rough with feeling, saying that she had spent the past 2 days barely functioning, unable to sleep or focus or think about anything except Maya. She said that she had become a counselor to help people, to make a difference, to use her own experiences of pain and healing to guide others toward wholeness. She had always believed in the ethical codes that governed her profession, had never once been tempted to cross those boundaries, until Maya had walked into her office 3 months ago and changed everything. Elena said that she had tried to convince herself this was just a passing attraction, a test of her professional ethics that she would overcome through discipline and distance. But the truth was that she had fallen in love with Maya, completely and irrevocably, in a way that made everything else in her life feel hollow and meaningless by comparison. She knew all the reasons this was wrong, understood the potential consequences, recognized the power imbalance and the ethical violations, but she also knew that she couldn't keep pretending, couldn't keep sitting in that chair and offering Maya clinical wisdom, when what she really wanted was to hold her and be held by her and build a life together. Maya listened to this confession with her heart hammering against her ribs, barely able to believe what she was hearing. When Elena finished speaking, they stood facing each other, across the office that had been the container for so much unspoken longing, and Maya made a choice. She crossed the distance between them in 3 quick steps and kissed Elena with all the pent-up desire and emotion of the past 3 months. Elena responded immediately, her arms coming around Maya, pulling her close, and for a perfect moment, nothing existed except the two of them and the overwhelming rightness of finally surrendering to what they both felt. But then Elena pulled back, her breath ragged, her eyes filled with both joy and anguish. She said that as much as she wanted this, wanted Maya, they couldn't do it this way. The therapeutic relationship had to be formally concluded, properly and ethically, before they could explore anything personal. Maya would need to find a new counselor to continue her healing work, and they would need to wait a period of time, at least several months, to ensure that Maya's feelings weren't influenced by the dynamics of therapy. Elena said that if after all that Maya still wanted to be with her, if this connection survived the transition from counselor and client to equals, then they could try to build something real and lasting, but they had to do it right, with integrity and respect for the process that had brought them together. Maya understood the wisdom in Elena's words, even as every cell in her body screamed to protest, to argue, to demand that they seize this moment and refuse to let go. But she also recognized that Elena was offering her something precious, a love built on a foundation of ethics and mutual respect, a relationship that could exist in the light instead of the shadows. So Maya agreed to Elena's terms, to the waiting and the proper termination and all the difficult steps that stood between this moment and the possibility of a future together. They scheduled their final counseling session for the following week, and Elena referred Maya to another therapist on campus who could continue supporting her mental health work. Those next months were the longest of Maya's life. She focused on her dissertation, diving deep into her research on queer narratives and finding unexpected solace in stories of people who had loved against all odds and societal expectations. She continued therapy with her new counselor, processing her feelings about Elena and examining whether her desire for a relationship was healthy or a continuation of unresolved therapeutic transference. She made friends in her graduate program, slowly building a chosen family that reminded her she wasn't alone in the world. And through it all, she thought about Elena constantly, wondered if Elena was thinking about her too, hoped that the connection they had felt was real and strong, enough to survive the separation. Elena maintained strict boundaries during this time, not contacting Maya outside of one formal letter that officially terminated their therapeutic relationship and wished her well. Maya understood the necessity of this distance, but it didn't make the silence any easier to bear. There were nights when she doubted everything, when she convinced herself that Elena had changed her mind or that what they had felt was just an illusion created by the intensity of the therapeutic space. But then she would remember the way Elena had looked at her in that coffee shop, the way Elena had kissed her in the office, the raw honesty in Elena's voice when she confessed her love, and Maya would find the strength to keep waiting. 4 months after their last counseling session, Maya received an email from Elena. It was simple and direct, asking if Maya would like to meet for coffee to talk, not as counselor and former client, but as two people exploring the possibility of something more. Maya's hands had shaken as she typed her response, a single word that carried the weight of all her hope and fear. Yes. If this story has touched your heart, if you believe in love that persists despite obstacles, if you have ever had to wait for something you knew was worth fighting for, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear a story about courage and hope. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who need them most, and I am so grateful for this community we are building together. They met on a Saturday morning at a small cafe off campus, neutral territory where they could encounter each other fresh, without the weight of their previous roles. Maya arrived early, her stomach twisted with nerves, and when Elena walked through the door, Maya felt the same electric recognition she had experienced the first time she saw her. But now there was no professional distance between them, no ethical barriers, just two women who had chosen each other despite every complication and difficulty. They talked for hours, sharing their experiences of the past 4 months, admitting how hard the separation had been, acknowledging the risk they were taking by pursuing this connection. Elena had consulted with her own therapist and ethics board to ensure she was proceeding appropriately, demonstrating once again her commitment to doing things right. Maya shared how her new therapist had helped her understand that her feelings for Elena were genuine and not a symptom of transference, that she had the self-awareness to distinguish between gratitude for therapeutic help and authentic romantic love. As the morning stretched into afternoon, they discovered what they had suspected all along. The connection between them was real and profound, strengthened rather than diminished by the time apart. They talked about their hopes for the future,